A detective is decayed. This is your look at the DC Direct DC Essentials DCeased Batman. DC Essentials is a line of 7-inch action figures based on DC characters with universal appeal, accessible to both longtime collectors and those just starting out, which delivers authentic detail from a company with over 2 decades of experience creating high-quality action figures. Based on the popular DC Comics miniseries from 2019, DCeased, this DC Essentials action figure series takes the most popular characters in the line and turns them into zombie-like creatures. Before we get a closer look at the Cape Crusader, the first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure stands. Now, I feel in 2021 we want to start doing stuff a little bit differently. So along with that, we're going to be measuring our figures a little bit differently as well. Taking now the tape measure, and we're going to just mark it to the very top of his head, stopping it right there. The figure stands 6.9, or you could say 7 inches in height. I'm going to switch that over to centimeters, revealing that the deceased Batman stands 17.6 centimeters tall. Now, sadly for Batman, much like other instances of the DC Essentials figures, Batman comes with squat in the way of accessories. Nothing. No display stand. No lone Batarang just to be thrown into there. He comes with absolutely nothing. What you're seeing is what you're getting. And it's always been disappointing for me, I feel, when it comes to these DC Essential figures. They really should come with a lot more than what you're basically just seeing bare bones in a lot of the instances and a lot of the cases. But that being said, let's get a closer look at Batman. If you have managed to pick up yourself the previous Essentials Batman, not much does really get changed here, short of maybe, of course, this brand new head sculpt that they sculpted on the shoulders. The head sculpt is definitely departing from what we've seen before. Batman I would best describe as maybe anguished. He's a very anguished looking Batman. It also looks like he's got a dislocated jaw, as you can see how it's been slightly shifted to the side. I like the sculpt work that they added to this, as they didn't just add a new blood coat of paint on top of his face. They did do something a little bit different. Of course, this would probably just turn some people off if they want a traditional-looking Batman. But if you do like the DCeased line, I think it does do a pretty good job of capturing DCeased Batman. You can see, even the sculpting of the face, it kind of looks like he's got an Adam's apple hanging out. So you can see right there in the center of his mouth. The teeth are nicely sculpted. You can see the jaw is just slightly shifted to the side that we talked about before. And the top of his lip is also just off-cornered there. Even like the cowl actually does get its fair share of weathering and texturing. You can see all the little wrinkles and stuff, for example, on the side of the head. And like even looks like little chipped away areas. The section on the side of the cowl that I'm trying my best not to point at looks like it actually should have been painted in flesh tone, because it seems like it's an actual rip in the cowl and not something that's an indentation to the side of his cowl as mask. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the head sculpt. The rest of the body, unfortunately, just keeps to the same DC Essentials Batman design that we looked at before. So there's really not much that's changed here, of course, with a whole lot of additional paint that they've added. They've weathered it, but it's really hard to describe it. It, in some ways, looks like they've actually just dry brushed a brown over top of it. And in other cases, when I'm looking like the crotch piece, yes, let's draw everybody's attention to Batman's crotch. It seems almost like they didn't add nearly enough gray, and that this is the color of the plastic underneath it. I'm thinking it's probably that, although it's really hard to tell which method they've gone with to give us the look that we're looking at right now. Of course, you've got some rips and tears on his top torso and on the shoulders as well. These have all been easily cheaped out by simply just painting those gashes and rips in his costume. Could they have potentially gone in and retooled a new body to have those little rips? Of course they could have. But unfortunately right now it just sort of looks like slashes in flesh-colored paint, which doesn't unfortunately match the rest of Batman's face. It's a different flesh tone altogether. We can flip the cape up so you can see what it looks like inside. To their credit, at least they did paint the inside of Batman's cowl, but I mean, again, it kind of looks more so like it's unfinished paint. Like the coloring of the plastic is actually the one thing that's sticking out, and it's sticking out on the figure. It's not necessarily a case where they've painted over top of it. Of course, one thing that stays relatively unscathed is Batman's utility belt. It's been nicely painted here, both in black and yellow, and I've always really liked the design of this particular utility belt, even though it's really hard to make out where he would be storing anything. As for his hands, we're going to talk a little bit about that now. His hands are in a permanent anguished look or clawing look. We'll maybe go with clawing look. Again, I guess if they gave him any sort of accessories, he wouldn't really have the necessary means to probably hold it anyways. But it's just a shame that he doesn't come with anything to hold, short of maybe somebody's skull in his hands. I think when it probably comes time to displaying this figure for myself, I'm going to probably go the route of what I started with at the beginning of this review. Sort of have the hands sort of up by his head, realizing that he is part of the deceased. So quickly spinning the figure around so you can have a look at the back of the cape. The cape is a very narrow designed cape with very tightly folded little flaps, and you can see, of course, the points down below. The cape remains generally the same color as what we saw before. They don't change too much here, and the plastic that they use for it is really much a dense, very rigid style of plastic. Before we get down to the figure's articulation, we'll have a closer look at the body, at least his lower legs and feet. Again, not much really does change here. They're still not going with the pegs on the undersides of his feet, which is really disappointing because while I haven't had any issues with DCeased Batman, I certainly have had issues in the past with many of these DC Essentials figures falling over, and a display stand and certainly the means to peg this into a display stand would have been greatly appreciated. Okay, Batman, put your arms down. Let's get a closer look at the figure's articulation. If you've collected any one of these DC Essentials figures, you know by now the kind of stuff that you're going to be getting. You get a ball joint, which we've just run through just now, but he does also have a hinge joint, so you can angle the head up if you want to, and you can also angle it down if you want to, and you can slightly pivot the head back and forth. The arms hinge out to a full 90-degree angle bend. A little on the tight side, but it'll get the job done. You can see that he moves the arms quite easily out at that full 90-degree angle bend. You can move the arms forward, you can move the arms back. He has a swivel at the biceps section. You can also bend a double hinge on the elbow. There is no articulation on his glove. However, you can rotate his hands all the way around, and you can also hinge them back and forth. He has the upper torso crunch, which is a little tight on this figure, and I've tried my best to loosen it, and every time I feel like I loosen it, it gets tight and stiff again. I think there's probably a whole lot of additional paint that they've added to that area, maybe enough that it's really limited in what I can actually do with it. He does have a swivel in the waist. He does have the split on the legs. You can bring those legs completely out, giving him the bat splits. You can also bring Batman's legs forward and back. He has a swivel about 3/4 of the way up the thigh. And he does have a double hinge on the knee. No articulation in the boot, but you can bring the feet up and down, and you can also rock them back and forth. This Batman also doesn't have any toe articulation, which doesn't really disappoint me that we don't have toe articulation on Batman. What we do get is, though, a pretty good-looking Batman. Sort of, again, keeping us just the bare basics, the bare bones of what Batman would be with the DC Essentials line, and not doing all that much differently to it, short of just giving him a brand new head sculpt, and again, all this slightly dirtying-looking costume. I'm still not sure why DC Direct never felt the need to add more accessories when it came to their DC Essentials figures. If you're going to be calling them DC Essentials, sort of step up to the plate. This should have been a definitive go-to line, and in a lot of cases, even a Batman deserved to have more accessories than what he actually got. DCeased Batman, at least to his credit, gets a brand new head sculpt. It is different than the one that we had gotten before. A Screaming Batman works always well, because normally you get figures that have closed mouths, or smile, or something along those lines. Screaming characters tend not to happen too often, so when they do, I appreciate the fact that they actually went the mile and sculpted a brand new Batman head sculpt. The rest of the Batman body, of course, is just stock. It's the same as what we've gotten with all, if not all, the DC Essentials figures. So there's not really much that's going differently here. They did do their best to quote-unquote scuff the figure up by adding him a dirty, kind of brown color paint over top of his body. Now, I still don't know whether that's actually painted on top of the gray plastic, or if the gray is actually... I'm assuming that the gray plastic is the majority of the body. From a cost standing, it makes more sense to really sculpt the entire body in gray, then have to paint the entire body in gray. So my guess is, again, they just painted over top of the gray. But the end result, though, is it looks unfinished. It's almost like the paint is gray, and the plastic is that dark, grimy brown that's underneath it. I feel it doesn't work, or I feel like the paint should have been a lot better than just looking like it's been scratched on the surface. As for the rest of the Batman, he does deliver exactly, I guess, what he's supposed to deliver, a deceased-looking Batman. And short of the fact, again, he doesn't come with the accessories, short of the fact, again, he doesn't come with a display stand, is a decent-looking Batman that I'm looking forward to putting on display. Did you manage to pick up the DC Essentials DCeased Batman? Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of it. And if you're new to the channel and you're liking all the content you're seeing, just know that Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's right, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're going to have 2 videos a day. But to make sure that you know and you're in the know of when new videos are coming up, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and come back to this channel again those days, the Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because there's going to definitely be a lot more video content coming your way. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.